Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. As today, we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on episode 4 of the second season of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. Of course, following Daryl on his journey in France. Now, this season actually has a sort of subtitle to it as well, being the Book of Carol. As now we have both the story of Daryl in France and Carol's story as she journeys there herself, and eventually the two will once again be intertwined. Anyways though, this episode is titled Le Paradis pour toi. And excuse my terrible French, but in English, this title means Paradise for You. And this episode begins basically where the last one left off, with that cliffhanger ending, as Madame Jana orders her soldiers to gun down the crowd that Carol is among. But of course, not to go for the head, as they plan on turning them all into super walkers and using them to attack the nest. They also have Caudron there, hung up to a car. So obviously he is meant to be used as bait for these super walkers to be led to the nest. They gun literally everybody down here besides Carol, of course, as she hides among the bodies. Much like Karen did when the governor turned on his own people in the original series. They then begin injecting everyone there with the super walker darts, including Carol, but luckily she removes it right away, especially with what we see later on in this very episode. And in a rather, well, easy manner, Carol is able to get up and just get away from everything as she takes a car with Caudron and drives it into the nest right as Pouvar blows the entrance up with a mortar. As Pouvar and all of these super walkers attack the nest, Carol goes looking for Daryl and Caudron stays behind to fight, as he says he is doing this for the boy. As we cut to Isabelle, who is being held prisoner by Losang and Jacinta. He tries to get any answer out of her by recalling her past as a nun, and how she also thought Laurent was special. But she tells him that Laurent is still human. He just thinks in a way that could save humanity. That is what makes him special. He is not immune or some kind of god that Losang may think he is. Losang is just scared of losing control, and it's growing more and more obvious, in Isabelle's words. And as he is informed of Pouvar's attack on the nest, Isabelle uses that drain piece that she took in the last episode to slash Losang's face. But with Losang's downward spiral mentally, he lashes out in an extreme way and ends up stabbing Isabelle and then leaving her there to just die. But as Carol makes her way through the nest after taking out a few Pouvar and Nest soldiers, and in a sick fashion, she does come across Isabelle and tries to help her with the stab wound, as she then leaves to go and get Daryl, which is of course where we cut to next, as a member of the nest ends up freeing Daryl so that he can fight off the approaching super walkers. As he cuts his way through the hall of super walkers and Pouvar and Nest soldiers, at the end of it he comes face to face with Carol after all this time. The two finally reunite in a beautiful scene. He runs up to her and they hug, just like all of their other reunion scenes before. This one specifically reminded me a lot of the one back in season 5 of the original series. She brings Daryl to Isabelle in hopes of saving her, but of course it is too late. So Isabelle tells Daryl to find Laurent and make sure he is looked after and kept safe, as she ends up passing away. It's pretty sad to see Isabelle go, especially so soon, but I did have a feeling it was coming this season. Daryl and Carol head to the cave hidden in the woods where Laurent was being trained, and find out that he and Falou are both gone. So now they have to track them down, all while Madame Jana and Pouvar fully take over the nest and capture Losang and Jacinta. Now, as Daryl and Carol finally together make their way around France looking for Laurent and Falou, they get to catch up a bit. And the most important thing that they talk about here is that call that they had back in season 1 of this series, where Carol said that someone or something came back. Now, of course, everyone had their theories about who she was talking about, whether it was Morgan Jones or the most popular theory, of course, being that Rick Grimes came back. But she ends up saying that it was just a feeling that came back, not an actual person. She felt as if the Commonwealth was too quiet and something felt off. And then things started coming back to her. And I am assuming that the visions of Sophia's death are a part of that. But with all of that being said, does that mean that the ones who live actually takes place after Daryl Dixon? Anyways though, as these two venture around tracking the boy down, we just get a lot of great scenes and dialogue between these two that really showcases how great their dynamic is and truly has been all of these years. As Janae holds Losang and Jacinta as prisoner, she vows to find the boy and says that when she does, it will prove that Losang has been wrong and God was actually on her side, even if she is a non-believer. And on the other side of our story, Carol and Daryl end up finding tracks, but more than 2 people. So they follow after it and find themselves at a home where they find an older couple residing. These two both acknowledge Laurent, so he was here, but he has already left with Falou by car. They all sit down to eat together and they refer to Carol as Sister Isabelle, as of course everyone else is unaware that she has died. But Carol just goes along with it, likely so that her and Daryl can just get their way here and get sent on their way to find Laurent. In the morning, Daryl tries working on a few cars so that they can take one to go after Laurent, while Carol helps with the preparation of food. But they need some car parts, so later on, they all head further down this little town. Carol tells Daryl that everyone back home misses him and they miss him a lot, especially Connie and Judith. But Daryl says that he has gained a responsibility here with Laurent, even if he doesn't want that, because unlike all the other kids, he doesn't want to lose Laurent. I thought this was a little bit of a weird thing for him to say, but anyways, Carol asks him if he's just afraid of becoming more like her, as of course all the other children that she has looked after have all been killed. But anyways, as they get these car parts, there are a few little fun mentions that I think would be cool to see explored, as they mention the state of Florida and how they should go and visit it. This just makes me want to see other places that we have not seen in any of the series so far explored more often, whether it's another US state like Florida or other continents like Australia or Africa. Now they have everything that they need. Carol heads to the barn with the older lady and starts getting more flashbacks of Sophia's death. But after this, and before they can get going though, a scout of Pouvar soldiers shows up and collects some of the couple's resources. Kinda like how the saviors used to do themselves. Once again, at nighttime, Carol ends up giving Daryl a gift from Judith, a little statue that she made of him. As you can see the wings on it that are also on his iconic vest. Now, the next morning, the couple offered to have them for some food one more time before they head out. So, they do agree. But as more Pouvar show up, it is clear that something isn't right. So as they turn around, the older man holds them at gunpoint. Laurent, as he has made a deal with Pouvar without the knowledge of the old lady. And apologies for just calling them older man or older lady, as I don't really remember if they actually named these characters or not. But anyways, she just takes the gun away from him and sends Carol and Daryl downstairs to hide, as Madame Jana herself pulls up with some of her soldiers and confronts the older couple. She ends up telling them that they will end up searching the house themselves, as she plans on killing the two and having them get turned into super walkers to snuff out Carol and Daryl that she knows are still here. But as Carol hears this from outside, she guns down a few of Janae's men, saving the old couple, at least at this time. Carol does end up getting surrounded as Janae tries to make remarks about how Carol has never felt any loss as Janae has, as she says her husband was devoured by the very creation of the French only 5 minutes into the outbreak. So does she mean that the French actually had something to do with the initial outbreak? Did they literally create the walkers? I guess we will have to wait and find out, unless of course it's just another hint that The Walking Dead does, but never touches on in the future. Anyways though, Daryl ends up saving Carol, and then Carol takes one of the dart guns and shoots Janae in the back with the serum, leaving her unable to remove the dart, and again, another shocking death already, as the serum ends up deforming her face and sending the mixture through her blood as her eyes and her veins all turn black, and parts of her face literally pop off. A gruesome death, all done by her very own creation. After all of this, Carol and Daryl help bury the old lady who was unfortunately shot and killed during this whole ordeal. They then head out, and Carol assures Daryl that she knows that Laurent is indeed coming back home with them. Losang and Jacinta are informed that Madame Janae has been killed by Daryl and Carol by Sabine. She says that Janae's ways were not enough, but neither are Losang's, so they must come to a conclusion. That conclusion being Losang being set free and forming the Nest and Pouvar into one singular group with one common goal: finding Laurent. And this is where the episode ends off. And overall, I did think that this was another good episode for this second season. I really liked all of the action in this one, and of course, I really loved the reunion between Carol and Daryl. It is pretty sad to see both Isabelle and Madame Janae go, as they were both very good characters. But as I said previously, I had a feeling a few of these newer characters were going to be killed off. But unfortunately, I do think that Isabelle's death was definitely a bit rushed and a little disappointing. I think a lot of this episode felt a bit rushed. The whole arc of the Nest and Madame Janae just ending like that, so that they can just move on with Carol and Daryl, which does make sense, but they did it so quickly, and I also think that it would have been nice to at least see Isabelle survive a bit longer and be with Carol and Daryl together. I thought some things were a little dragged on in this episode, and of course, some things were done a little too fast. I still enjoyed it though, but anyways, I think I would give this episode an 8 out of 10, but I cannot wait for episode 5, the penultimate episode, next week. But yeah, that about does it for this episode, from me at least. But of course, I would like to hear your thoughts on it as well, so make sure to leave them down below. Anyways though, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode, feel free to give it a like. And with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.